welcome. And we'll start right off with our bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And
Amen.
thank you. I'm going to pop us on this. And I know you can see it now. All right. So ever since I kind of got a better grip on the content of the Torah, summertime has always been a little bit of a strange experience for me, because I know that for most people think they look forward to summer, they see it as a vacation time, as a time to relax and enjoy life and get away from the grind a little bit. But the truth is that in terms of the Torah readings, right up until this particular Parsha in the book of Numbers, it's very positive. It's all about entering the land of Israel. They're all getting organized. They're doing the plans and everything. Okay, and from this point on in chapter 11, okay, things just fall apart. They fall apart, and there's a series of parshiot for the rest of the book of Numbers that basically are moments of rebellion against God, etc., and just it's awful. It's awful. And because I, in some ways, emotionally relate to this material, um, just trying to absorb it and accept it and understand it and live with it is interesting, let's say, right? So, it just bounces right off after those bracketed passages that we read before. So, we just read just a very short little piece, one sentence, that they were speaking ill in God's presence. And Rashi's saying, they were looking to do it. They wanted to. They want to annoy God. They were doing it like, when they talk about children of Israel, sometimes that word children has more resonance than you might think, right? And there's consequences, right? It says, Tiv bam Eish Hashem, a fire from the Lord came and burnt them. And then we had the idea of who were actually the ones who were affected by it, and there's a difference of opinion. Some say that it had to do with the Erev Rav, that it had to do with the riffraff, and some say that actually when it says kitzay, it's referring to a word katzin, which is like a captain or in other words, the leadership, etc. But what's so interesting is that despite the fact that there are negative consequences, they don't learn the lesson. They don't say to themselves, what are we supposed to learn from this? And there's just, we look at human history as well. And there's no doubt that wars cause more problems than they solve. And there's a lot of effort that has to be expended in trying to solve all the problems that war has caused, the tragedies, etc. And yet we continue to do it. We continue to do it. It's like amazing. So, which, by the way, could be a reason to believe that there is something beyond this life. One reason. I think there are other reasons, but anyway. So let's get into this. So, of course, they're getting smacked. So what did they do? Vayitzak ha'am el Moshe, and the people called out to God, to Moses. They cried out to Moses. Vayitpalel Moshe, and Moshe, being the leader that he is, and being understanding and loving the people he leads, it says Moses prayed El Hashem, he prayed to God, Vatishka ha'esh, and they use an interesting verb here. The fire sank, and Rashi is going to explain that, right? So, 3 sentences about this. Right. Vayitzak ha'am el Moshe. So the people cried out to Moses. So, Mashal, and this is in the Sifrei, he says, there is a parable, Lemelech basar v'adam, regarding a king of flesh and blood, in other words, a mortal king, Sheka'as al beno, who was angry with his son. V'halach haben etzel ohavo shel aviv, and the son went to someone who loved his father. In other words, a very, very beloved friend. The son went to a beloved friend of his father. V'amar lo, and he said to him, Tse uvakesh alai me'aba. Go and please ask for forgiveness from dad. So that's this situation. In other words, if we're asking ourselves, wait a second, why didn't they just appeal to God directly? Why didn't they simply say, Lord, we have sinned, we have transgressed, please forgive us? They don't do that. They go to Moses, and this parable explains why it was Moses they went to. Vatishka ha'esh. So the fire sank. Shka'a bimkuma. So the point about this is that it sank right down into the earth where it was burning at that particular moment. Ba'aretz, bimkuma ba'aretz, in its place on the earth. Ilu chazra la'achat haruchot, because had the fire gone back to one of the directions that it had come from. So we have this fire sweeping the camp, if you can visualize that, right? It would have, this mekapel is actually a word that means to fold, but there's also a meaning of it that I saw in Jastral that means to scrape out. So v'holechet means a continuous, when this verb is used, or this adverb is used regarding a verb, it has to do with continuous motion. In other words, it would continually scrape out kol oto haruach, that particular direction, meaning that there'd be more people dying. Essentially, that's the idea of scraping out or going over a direction where more people would die. And that's why the Torah picks that specific verb, that it's to sink, that the fire sank into the ground. Next. They called that particular location Tav-Erah, and it's a play on words, because it's from the word ba'ar, right? Ba'ar means to burn. Okay, and here we go, right? You have ativ arbam. You see up here, there's the verb, right? To burn, and here it explains ki ba'aravam, because amongst them, right? Amongst them, it burned, or it burned them, Eish Hashem, the fire of God. The fire of Hashem burned there. So I think the point about this verse in mentioning the name of a place, to me at least, is trying to say there was a lesson to be learned there, and not to forget the lesson. That's what I think is the issue going on here. So, onwards. Here we go. The very next sentence. V'ha'asafsuf. That's an unusual word, right? I don't know how many times it even occurs in the entire Bible. Safaria translates it as riffraff. It does sound good. Okay. In other words, it's talking, asafsuf sounds like a mixed group of people, but also if it's got to do with sof, right, with the word sof, like it means the edges of decency, right? Asher bekibor, which were in their midst, hitavu ta'ava, they began to crave. Again, Safaria's translation says they had a gluttonous craving, and we'll see from the context that what they were craving was, in fact, food. They had this deep desire to, just this gluttonous feeling of craving for food. Vayashuvu vayivku gam b'nei Yisrael. So this word vayashuvu has to do, like shuv means to return, right? But I think it means, I was playing around with it, and I'm almost sure there probably isn't a translation, and it isn't necessarily supported by Rashi either. But lashuv can also mean in terms of return, it can mean once again, right? So, and especially because it says Gam B'nai Israel. So the Asasuf is not the B'nai Israel, right? It says, so if I were to translate this the way I'm looking at it, it would say, right? And once again, also the children of Israel cried, wailed, Vayomru, and they said, Mi achelenu basar, who will give us meat to eat? Very descriptive situation. Okay. So again, complaining, complaining, complaining. Va'asasuf. So Rashi, of course, needs to tell us this weird word, right? So he says, Elu Erev Rav. This is referring to the mixed multitude. And here's the asafsuf, right? Sheni'isfu alehem, who were gathered together with the Israelites, but Setam Mimitzrayim, when they departed from Egypt. So the asafsuf, the sentence itself indicates that the Asafsuf were not Israelites, and Rashi, of course, is clarifying that this is this mixed multitude that joined the Israelites when they left Egypt. Vayashuvu. So Rashi translates this as Gam B'nai Yisrael. All right, so to return, he's understanding it as that it simply means Gam B'nai Yisrael, that also the children of Israel Vayivku imahim, cried out, wailed with these people. So, Mi yochilenu basar, who is going to feed us? Yachilenu, excuse me. Mi yachilenu basar, who is going to feed us meat? And Rashi asks a rhetorical question. Vechilo hayalahem basar? You mean they didn't already have meat? What do you mean? Who's going to feed us meat? They had meat. They had cattle and sheep. It already says later on, a little later on, here we go. It says in Exodus 12, back in Exodus 12, it says, V'gam erev rav Allah itam, that a mixed multitude also went up with them, and goes on to say, Vetzon uvakar, and it goes on to say, and sheep and cattle, etc. Okay. The imtomar. So should you then retort with, should you say, Achlum, they ate them. They consumed all of them. They didn't have any left. That's why they were crying out. V'halo b'knisatam le'eretz. But we read a little, as this is the point, a little later on, we read that when in fact they were ready to enter the land of Israel, or the land of Canaan at the time, Nehemiah, it states, and here it is in Numbers chapter 32, Umikne Rav Haya Livne Reuven. It says there was much cattle. The children of Reuben, the Reubenites, had a lot of cattle, etc. Ella Shemevakshim Alila. But the truth is, again, and this is the second time we've had this idea, they were looking for a pretext to complain. They were looking for a reason to complain. Again, such human behavior. And in a sense, these stories are telling something to ourselves about complaining. Zacharnu, and they go on to say, Zacharnu, we remember, et hadaga, the fish, asher nochal b'mitzrayim, which we ate in Egypt, chinam, free, didn't cost us anything. We didn't pay for it. We got free fish. What else? Et hakishuim, the squash, ve'et ha'avatichim, and the melons, ve'et hachatzir, and the leeks, ve'et ha'avatzalim, and the onions, ve'et ha'shum, ve'et ha'shumim, and the garlic. Well, I'm glad they mentioned onions and garlic. For sure, it's all good, right? So we're getting all this stuff for nothing back in it. Was how good it was back in Egypt. It was just so great back there, right? And again, I think this is so typical of human behavior and how we have such short memories. And here they are going through terrible slavery in Egypt, but at this point, they've already forgotten about it. I think it's maybe 2 years have passed, a little more than 2 years, and they've already forgotten. And here they're talking about the free squash that they got and the free fish, etc., etc. Okay. So here we go. And we got it in Egypt for nothing, right? We ate it in Egypt for nothing. Im Tomar, okay, says, should you say that the Mitzriim, that the Egyptians, not im lahem dagim chinam, okay, if you're going to say that the Egyptians gave them fish for nothing, fish for free, you want to argue that, okay? V'halo kvar ne'amar, well, we've already read somewhere back in Exodus chapter 5, v'teven lo tinaten lachem, where Pharaoh says you shouldn't give them straw, right? They used to be given straw to make the bricks. You're not going to get straw anymore. You're going to have to go get it yourself. Im teven lo hayu notnim lahem. If they weren't giving them straw, chinam, for nothing, dagim hayu notnim lahem, chinam, were they going to be giving them fish for free? They weren't willing to give them straw for free. They're giving them fish for free. So again, right? Sorry, let me see. Okay. I think this is Mahu. I think this is supposed to be a vav, right? Umahu omer chinam. So what does it mean? What do they mean when they say for nothing? They do. Chinam min ha-mitzvah, meaning free from the obligation of a commandment. Remember, there were commandments associated with getting the manna. And of course, they now were commanded. And Lauren, you know what I'm going to say, right? Yes, go on.
Well, now that you said the first word, yeah. But
Yes.
ain't nobody gonna tell me what to do.
It's systemic. It's systemic. If we're not willing to learn how to be obedient to the right causes, we're in trouble. It's systemic. So that was the free from any kind of obligation to God. We really don't want to feel that way. Okay. So, and I think honestly that the Sifrei is right on here.
But
Go
this
ahead.
is before Sinai.
Say that again.
This is technically before Sinai.
Is it?
Before they receive, but I mean, no, what they're remembering when
Yes.
you were talking about the free of charge fish
Yes. Yes.
that in Egypt,
Right. Right.
that was before Sinai.
Correct.
That
Correct.
was
Correct. Right.
before the yoke of the commandments.
Correct. That's right. That's what they're resenting now. Correct. Good point. Thank you for bringing that out. Yes, exactly. It was before Sinai. Yeah, they hadn't gotten the Torah, right? They're rejecting the Torah or resenting the Torah. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah,
It,
go.
I mean, what's really interesting is because they supposedly went from freedom to slavery. I mean, from slavery to freedom, but they kind of felt like they went from freedom because they're actually using the word free
Yeah.
to slavery.
Yes, yes, right. Because now there was a sense of obligation for having been rescued from the Egyptians, okay, and they resented that. Look, I'm pretty certain that no one is in love with their lender. No one's in love. And, when people are generous, they aren't necessarily rewarded for their generosity. Yes, David.
Yeah. So I guess the other question here is, the difference between, slavery and maybe obligation, because in one sense, their slavery is their forced obligation in one sense, but they're also, we have an obligation to God. So the question is it really is a difference because in one case, they're obligated or forced to be, beholden to other people versus, beholden to God. And then that asks the question of, is it just our nature to say we don't want to be beholden to anybody?
Well,
I don't, yeah.
Right. We look at liberty, right? Look at how we understand liberty, and we confuse liberty with license. Okay.
Yeah.
License is what they're looking for. They're not looking for liberty. Liberty implies obligations and responsibilities. License implies the freedom to do whatever it is that you want to do. And of course, the deeper sense here, which, no surprise here, is that we wind up being slaves on some level or another, willy-nilly. In other words, you can be a slave to your own, your own feelings,
Yep.
own impulses. And that's the worst kind of slavery, is when you've become a slave to your impulses. Being able to be master of your impulses is the greatest freedom of all. And clearly the Torah, and remember, when the subtext of the Torah is doing what doesn't come naturally, is an amazing thing. It's an amazing resource. Anyway, and the time, of course. I mean, I think this is worth thinking about and worth reflecting on. So Rashi's got some words to explain. Hakishuim, right? All right. So we're going to go further. Amar Rabbi Shimon, right? So they remember the squash, right, or the cucumbers, as Rashi's going to tell us. Amar Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon said, "Mipnei ma haman mishtane." He says, "Mipnei ma." So he says, why? What do they mean? The squash, etc. Mishtane lechol davar, because the taste. This is the tradition. There's a tradition that the manna tasted like anything, right? Chutz, except for these particular. The reason they mention the squash, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic is because the manna would taste like anything you liked, right? Whatever you imagined you wanted to eat, the manna would satisfy that particular craving, right? Except for these particular issues, these specific vegetables, right? Mipnei. And the reason that the manna didn't taste like these particular vegetables, shehen kashim lemenikot, because they affect the milk of a woman who's nursing. They affect the milk. Omrim leisha. There's a saying. One says to a woman, "Al tochli shum uvatzal." Do not eat leeks or onions, mipnei hatinok, because of your baby. And actually, I know for a fact that they have to be very careful. The farmers have to be very careful that there aren't certain vegetables that wind up on the field that the cows might consume because it affects the taste of the milk. Mashal melech. So this whole situation is compared to a king, and it says chule, etc., etc. So I did look this up, okay, and kedeita besifre, as it states in Sifre, and unfortunately Rashi doesn't tell us what this particular parable is, but essentially, okay, instead of, I could show it to you in Sifre, where the reference is there. It's easy to get the cross reference. But essentially, the situation is that the king gave his son, he had his son with a teacher, right? And he told the teacher to make sure that the son, let's say, this is just by way of explaining this, not to do or not to eat certain things, okay? Because, or to do certain things that he knew would endanger the life of his son. And the son's reaction was, all you really try to do is control my life. And that is such a dynamic out there, right? That especially parents and children, where parents have the best intention of protecting the best interests of their children, and the reaction is, you're just trying to control my life. It's just because you want to control me. And that is right out there. That's basically of this story. You just want to control my life. Kishuim, so he explains Kishuim. Haim, look at this. Cucumbers. And it's interesting because I really realize now, because I've seen the term gherkin, right? It's also a word that refers to generally little cucumbers, and it's obviously a Yiddish word. So the German word is gherkin, and the g and the k, right, are the sort of definitely cognate words here, belaz, in a foreign language. So avatichim, and he says borikas. And I don't think this is necessarily French. I'm not sure. I know that borikas is a Yiddish word for beets, although the word avatiach in modern Hebrew refers to watermelon. That's what you refer to it. So I'm not sure, but it is very, it definitely looks like borikas. Hachatzir, which would be krishin, because chatzir is sometimes simply grass, okay? But krishin means leeks. And apparently the Yiddish, or the French, I guess maybe the French, poré? I'm not sure. Lauren, I don't know what you have there in your text, but something like that. Oh, looks like puree. And going into a little bit more Rashi here, he's got some more words to explain, just almost finished. So there we go. There's the Yiddish word, loich, leek, right? Loich, v'targumo. And he says the Aramaic is yat botzinaya. It must be a leak in Aramaic, something like that, etc., etc. Unless botzinaya is the beginning of that sentence. Let's take a look. We can. Yeah, tume is leaks. Here we are. Here's the Havena Began. Here, botzinaya. So it's the first word. It's the word referring to the squash or the cucumbers. So he is. And avatichaya, look at this. Karate, leaks. Uvotzle, you can see Betsalim Votzle. Okay, so we will stop here. And yeah, they're not finished. So tomorrow we will keep going with their complaints. It's they get into quite a bit of detail here. Okay, so and
You said that well, in the Rashi it said that, or whatever, that it might affect the mother's milk to eat these, and that's why they didn't. But the manna was just flavor. It wasn't taking on the actual content of the food. It was just the flavor that could be right. I mean,
right,
it wasn't like if
go on. Sorry, please go on.
no, I think you understand. You can answer it if you're ready.
Okay, so that's the point. Is it was the flavor that would affect the flavor of the milk.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so it's not even necessarily digging deep into the chemical composition or whatever or physical composition. I think it has to do with the flavors of these particular foods and the idea that that flavor would affect the flavor of the milk. So I think that's would be it. I'm happy to take any other questions for the record. Otherwise, I will stop the recording.
Did the cattle also eat manna?
That's a great question. That is a great question.
Mhm.
I have
I
never.
mean, there's not a lot to eat out there, and we know they've got cattle because they're sacrifice. What are they sacrificing if they don't have this stuff?
I know.
Right?
And the thing about cattle is that they consume a lot of grass. Okay, they just sort of, and goats will
Mhm.
nip it to nothing. So I don't know. Golda, I've never heard that question before. That's
Really? Nobody's brought that
nobody's never asked me that
Oh.
question. It's such a great question. I wonder, it's sort of a question that should be asked in the Talmud, right? Yeah. We can, I guess we can check with Rabbi Google, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Come up with any answer there. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.